Jesus went on the Sabbath day to through the corn. It says at that time Jesus went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were and hungered, and began to pluck the ears of corn and eat. Now we just read in Exodus 20 that you should do no work on the Sabbath day, but yet here Jesus and his disciples are plucking corn. So again, the Sabbath in the Old Covenant was actually connected to the Old Covenant. It was connected to the Levitical priesthood, where people were slaves to sin, and they had to have the temple where God dwelled, and they had to do things very systematically because they did not have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit to actually desire to love God. And so they had to, everything they did had to be structured. I talked about this before. Think about a prison, a federal penitentiary, right? And assuming everybody in that penitentiary is guilty, they're lawless, they're rebellious. Because they're lawless and rebellious, and there's nothing in them that seeks to do good, you have to put them on a clock. Everything has to be written out to the written code, line by line, precept upon precept, because their entire nature is rebellious. You have to tell them when to eat, when to go out into the yard, when to sleep, when to do their work, when to do this, when not to do this, when to do everything. Everything has to be lined out to the letter. That's an indictment on their nature, that they're so lawless and rebellious that you have to line out everything. If they were actual people who desired to do what is not corrupt, what is not violent, if they love righteousness, you wouldn't have to put them on a clock. So likewise, because the people who were slaves to sin and rebellious without faith in Jesus Christ, they had to restrain their lawlessness, right? Because all they wanted to do was murder and be in idolatry and steal and kill and just fornicate and do everything and serve other gods and just do their own thing. And so for God to use a remnant, he had to restrain their behaviors and lifestyles because their heart was not converted. And so the lettering of the law in the Old Covenant came with the penalty of being stoned to death or exiled. They wanted people to know that we have to get rid of you one way or the other if you engage in these behaviors. It was not about changing the heart, because only faith in Jesus, which they had to look forward to what Jesus would do, like you see in Ezekiel 36, 17 through 25, talked about changing the heart. And then God will give you his spirit, and I will cause you to walk in his statutes and his judgments and do them. That's showing a desire. A desire is there.